Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Warren. I'm the program director from WXPN. Welcome to another Non-COMM Thursday. It's great to see everybody. If you're just joining us, please make sure you put your name and affiliation in the chat room. And a couple quick rules. We're going to try to cover a lot of ground this evening. I'm going to turn things over to Jessica Weber in a second. But just as a reminder, please keep yourselves on mute. Mute thyselves. And also, I want to make sure everybody knows that next Thursday, August the 13th, we're going to have the virtual music meeting that Sean Coakley is going to host. And we should be getting a registration out for that on Monday. All right, so without further ado, let me turn over to Jessica Weber from Cosign. Jessica, thanks for being here.
I just want to say it's awesome to see everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming through. Very, very exciting. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Jess. I run a radio promotion and artist development company called Cosign based here in Brooklyn. You've probably interacted with us or somebody who works with me at some point, so hello. Just as a little quick background, my colleagues and I kind of started this group on June 2nd, and it was actually, it was around the time where things felt like they were kind of spinning out of control after the death of George Floyd. And we actually saw the post that the amazing women who started the Pause the Show initiative put up. And we wanted to participate because all of us felt like it was completely impossible to carry on with business as usual. So we took that day and we met internally in the morning and we organized a call in the afternoon with a lot of our colleagues and friends and DJs and station folks. And that's how this call was born. And, you know, we started talking and connecting on what was going on. And we kind of all realized that we all felt like we were in a really unique position to do something about what was happening and felt obligated to do so. So we kept meeting and things were changing so crazy in the news from week to week. But we noticed that there was, kind of a shift in the understanding around what was happening with the Black Lives Matter movement. And that people were kind of processing this information in a completely new and open way. And that kind of underscored what we had, a lot of the stuff that we had been talking about and how important it was that we continue working as a group together. And that we as this community, as a unit, were talking openly and critically about racism and making sure people are recognizing it as the human rights issue that it is. So, as a community, as our community, we've had this conversation many times before, but I think we're all here today because we all realize and we all feel like this is a moment and we all want to be a part of making a meaningful and kind of lasting and structural change within. So, we've seen a seismic shift in the way that people are understanding what's happening on the streets and with the protests. And that's because people out there are actually talking about what's going on. They're engaging with each other in conversation. They're talking to their communities. So our mission is kind of to encourage that growth and understanding and give people whatever resources they need to continue connecting with their communities and having those conversations. So here we are. We've been meeting every Tuesday since. We've come together around some goals that we've all been working towards. I'm going to do a little screen share or try to, and just, let you guys see. Wait, can I share? Oh, yes, I can. Oh, you disabled my screen sharing, Bruce. Can I screen share? Well, if not, okay, cool. So here are just some groups or some goals that we have kind of centered ourselves around. Amplify Black and Indigenous people, and amplify the voices of people of color. Build community and networks for greater access to the radio waves. Advocate for these conversations and the conversations necessary to address racism and racial inequality in the radio space. And provide resources to help stations, labels, promoters, and individuals engage in those conversations. So that's my introduction to you. I'm so excited to introduce the panelists who are going to help me kind of tackle our action items on how we're trying to get to this place. With me today, I have Tarik, who is the Director of Digital Strategy and Innovation at Radio Milwaukee. You guys have known him and know him most likely. Steb Montez from KRML in KRML. He's the APD over there and the production manager. Also, Malia Lazu, who's a diversity consultant and the founder of an amazing organization called the Urban Labs. And Davey D, who is my homie for decades and decades, an amazing journalist, hip-hop historian, host of Hard Knock Radio, and somebody who's been, both him and Malia actually have been in the organizer space for a really long time. So I think, it'll be really great perspective to hear from all these different perspectives. But Tarik, I kind of want to start with you because you were the one who kind of sparked our, the first piece of content which we all kind of came together around, which was the Say Their Names audio recording. So it would be awesome if you could talk a little bit about how that piece came about, and also why you decided to share it with us.
Basically, just to give background, 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, part of our DNA core is to address these issues and try to bring people together since day one. And it's kind of why I took the job in the first place. It was beyond just music, but it's actually trying to make an impact. So when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor happened, a lot of us, including our music director, is like, who are we? What are we going to do in this moment as a radio station in our community? We can't just sit by and just play music or maybe play a few artists here and there, but we want to be more engaged with our community. So we actually developed a whole plan, music director, program director, a content director, where we started creating a bunch of content. We start covering every march, protests on our website. So every week you have what's marches coming up, you know where it's going. We did stories around the community. We even went back in our archive to share all the stories we've done in the Black community to show the positivity. And then Salam, one of our amazing producers, audio producers, decided, why don't we record every name that's been affected by police violence into a story piece? And we thought it was a great idea. So she basically recorded this piece, and we linked it to, I guess the idea came from Code Switch. Code Switch kind of had a podcast about that, and so we kind of took that and use that as inspiration. And so we put that out there and got a huge response locally, amazing response locally. She did a fantastic job. And then we were talking, and I brought it up as an audio piece, as this would be a perfect thing, easy thing for stations to highlight using their platform instead of actually trying to, create a whole content and writing. But this is kind of an entryway to get people to know about the issues and who's been affected by these issues.
Yeah. And so, just in case, I'm sure some of you are aware, but what we've done is we have created a post on the Play and BE service that's gone out over to, I think, a ton of different formats. I feel like maybe 30, or I don't know, we've sent it wide to a lot of people via Play and BE, but all the promoters have also come together and posted the piece on their sites and been talking to stations about it. And we've just been using it as kind of that first bridge to kind of connect on the conversation itself. Because even if they're in a place where they may not to do or know what to do with the audio recording, it sparked the conversation. And honestly, on a larger scale, it sparked the idea for us to then create this community resource Dropbox, which we've now been building. And, if one thing that we've been kind of collecting from people like Tarik, from our good friends at KXP, from XPN, from KCRW, is content pieces that are relevant to what's going on now. So as we have over the past couple months, we have been collecting interviews and some music of new artists and just trying to create an archive of information for people who may not already have resources like Tarik's station does or whatever, to kind of be able to engage and, you know, be talking currently about what's happening now. Tarik, do you feel like, I mean, as far as like the content that you guys are putting out, whether it's about the protest or just what's happening, how has that been for your engagement, for the station's engagement? Have you guys noticed a different level of like folks connecting with you on that, or?
Yeah, a lot of people been sharing our content. The stories been doing have been really great. Salam and the editorial team been putting up some great, unique, original stories and content in this space dealing with systemic racism. One of the coolest campaign we launched, thanks to our marketing team, we launched this kind of sign campaign inspired by a Bob Marley lyric for these times, and the demand has been crazy for these yard signs. So it's so like I get emails saying, "Hey, how do I get these yard signs?" So we've been in the community giving these yard signs in a place called Sherman Phoenix, is on the north side where a lot of African Americans live. We give away signs there. We partner with them. We do it near our station. We do it in the Bayview. So that's another way we've been engaging in a physical space with these yard signs, showing their support for the effort and for people to recognize what's going on. But really, I've been really proud of the editorial team, the content we've been creating, and the stories been telling. And then Maddie, well, who's our kind of community engagement person, been doing webinars with Salam, who did the reading, with local groups like Block, which is Black Leaders Organizing Communities. We've done one with the ACLU. We also did one with the writer from the Brookings Institute, Andre Perry, on his book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property. So we've been doing that as well. So like really going deep in various ways, from editorial to our normal, we have events, we now virtual events. So we're really trying to do this throughout the organization.
And then, so Steb, I'm going to pop over to you too, because you've been working with our content team. One of the other ways that we've been working to kind of engage with like amplifying Black voices, you know, on air, but also just across platforms, is via social media. So give us the lowdown on the social media stuff we've been doing.
Right. It's been really important, I think, through all of this to have that, because it's leveraging our social networks and amplifying what we already know and love, music. So that's one way to kind of to backdoor the information, if you will. But Isaac, Francie, Sean have done a really amazing job of really creating and crafting content that's either bringing light to some historical history in general, whether it be in music or, you know, erased history, or essentially stuff that isn't really gone over a lot. I think we've seen a generational descent into kind of dehumanizing Black and Native American history in the United States, and especially in our school systems. And the easiest way for us to kind of to participate in that, and as far as educating people, is to put the content out there. And so there's been some really good content and really great response. The most recent was the Black Music History, Shoegaze, and Dream Pop, which got over 10,000 likes through Cosign, almost 7,000 shares, which is like, or saves, excuse me. It's like a lot. People are going back to it, and that's really important, I think. People are saving it to go back to it. We've also had some good traction with the history of punk. And now we're starting to craft audio pieces to kind of go along with that as well. So organizations, historical landmarks in time, and then kind of some history. Those are all kind of important parts to the social media arm. And again, Isaac and Sean and Francie, like as far as the visual aspect of it and crafting that, have done such a great job with making that work.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see people kind of react to the posts, especially the music-driven posts. There's clearly, there's like the thirst for that knowledge is out there. And I have to say, you know, when we've created these posts, and just like for everybody on here who's either, you know, if you're a promotion person, a label person, we've created these posts and we're offering them to everybody and anybody to post on their social media. You don't have to tag back. I mean, eventually when the group gets, you know, a name, we'll probably put something on there. But right now, like this information belongs to the group. And multiple people have been posting and seeing the same kind of responses, like thousands and thousands of engagements, and not just from us, from Tiger Bomb, from Planetary, from Pirate. The information is going out and widely having the same response. So it's clear that people are looking and excited about engaging with this information.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We can't even really account for what the numbers look like from other folks sharing the content. So we
Yeah,
know I mean, that
yeah.
that number's got to be huge. But it's been fun kind of watch it develop and then also utilize this platform. Again, the music ones have so much traction because sharing the similar interests of music. How we can incorporate more music messages into it, that's kind of down the line. But I think
Mm,
it's open for all of it, and I think it's really good to learn some history while you're at it and kind of bring that to the light.
definitely. And Davey, I had to have you in the mix because you've been such a huge part of my musical history, obviously, and we've been going to shows together forever. But also, like, a lot of what you were doing journalistically in the early 2000s when we were hanging out was a huge influence on me. And I felt like it would be good for you, especially with the contributions that you've been making to the community Dropbox and bringing us that message from Rodney Floyd and everything, just to kind of give folks a little bit of perspective on the importance of kind of programming your show and your station to the moment.
Well, there's a few things to kind of say here. One, I would encourage all of us to look at everybody in this group and really not take it for granted, but to uplift it. It's not often that you have this, and there's a rich history of radio DJs coming together and changing movements in ways that absolutely wouldn't have existed without them. So you have August 11th, 1967 in Atlanta. Martin Luther King gave a speech. It's a rare speech. I did post it on YouTube, so it's up there if you ever want to hear it. And it's a speech that he gives to a collection of radio and radio announcers. Is called NATRA, National Association of Television and Radio Announcers. And it's an incredible speech by Dr. King because he's talking about the role of black radio DJs. And he's pretty frank. There's no civil rights movement without all these DJs. And he starts naming them: Purvis Spam, Georgia Woods, Jack Gibson, who is better known as Jack the Rapper. He goes through a whole list. And he talks about their contributions to the music. And when you study King, what you find is that he didn't go door to door and knock and do all that. It was the radio people who took it upon themselves to be very involved with the movement of the day. They excelled in crafting messages and bringing to the people relevant information and connecting a community that was left out with what was going on. So if there was going to be a march across a bridge, right, then King would go to these radio people and they would make going on that march sound as good as a summer jam. And just to kind of round it off, King SELC headquarters was in the same building as WERD, which was one of the first black stations in the country. And Jack the Rapper, who influenced everybody from Wolfman Jack to Casey Kasem, was the main DJ there, and that's what they strategically excelled in doing. So I bring all this up to say that when you look at the history, you find that there were these moments. In 2006, it was Latino radio DJs that brought 1 million people out to the streets of LA and all around the country when there were threats to really upend immigration status. Unfortunately, those DJs were shut down by the corporations almost immediately. In King's situation, the Natural Organization, seeing the success of that of the movement, had just dedicated themselves to buying radio stations and building their political influence, and then they were attacked by the organized crime syndicate and they were shut down. We're at a moment where we can address 3 pertinent issues that are in need right now and even excel what has happened in the past. One is information warfare going on. People are out there trying to mislead folks. You just saw Facebook removed a troll farm that was masquerading as as Black people who, in this case, were supporting Trump. You saw it happen over the years past. So you have a scenario where people don't know what to trust, right? So that's one thing. So all of us collectively can be beacons of truth in our respected areas. The second thing that we have is a situation where many of our people are demographically pimped. And what I mean by that, there's no interest in their humanity. It's like, how many women do I have? How many men do I have? How many people of a particular ethnic group do I have? What people can donate to our station if we're a community station, and what people can't. So we're looking at people as statistics and not as folks who are in need. And then lastly, we come to the point that people need service. So I mentioned what's going on with the schools. There is no information in the city of Oakland as to when schools are opening, how it's going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. You know who's going to fill that void? It's going to be those of us on the radio who are in position to speak that truth and don't have to worry about ratings and don't have to worry about commercials and all these other things that often hand tie a lot of other folks. You have people who are still looking for information about where they can get relief from this COVID situation as we're going into a second set of lockdowns. And we have an election season coming up. So we can be a group of people that chase clout and do the status quo thing, become famous because, you know, we are able to do something controversial and do this sensationalistic thing. Or we could be of service to our community and be a transformative body. And I think we're well on the way of doing that. And I just want to encourage us to continue that. For me personally, and just to answer your question, Jess, I build off of that legacy of King and everybody. I come up in those traditions. I've been around people who come out of those camps. And so as a radio person, I was taught and it was hammered into me, it's not the Davy D's show and he's famous and all that. It is, you are in service to your community. What do they need? You know, what is the issues that you need to put forth? And so I'm a facilitator of conversation. I'm not just a dictator or broadcaster who's speaking and you don't speak back. And so I want to encourage us all to do that. I'll close with this. There was another radio revolution that emerged, and that was on the conservative side of things. So people ask, how did all this right-wing and conservative folks really come into pass? They took advantage of all those AM stations that everybody left, and they probably had similar meetings and got everybody on the same page and said, we're going to transform this country, but we're going to move it to the right. And they've done that very successfully, whether you politically agree with them or not. There's no doubt that what they did was transformative for the audience that they were trying to reach. The, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought on that. Well, I'll just leave it at this. Hopefully we're able to take the baton. Oh, on the music side, there used to be meetings with radio people, with the late Ricky. I'm forgetting his last name, but Ricky used to hold these meetings where he got all the DJs around the country on the same page musically. So people used to tap in and it would be like, what record are we going to break? We're going to break Pharrell or Jay-Z. So a lot of these urban artists were able to break because there were these similar conversations. So I think what we're doing here is we're trying to be transformative, not in the sense of, you know, creating economic windfalls for a company, which is what some of those meetings were about, but to really transform the minds and inspire hope and give people some direction at a time when people are deliberately trying to misdirect them. And so at this moment, I hope all of us are able to take the baton. That's the tradition that I come out of. That's the commitment that me and the people that I roll with have made. And I like, and it's just incredible to see 100 people on this call that I think are moving in the same direction. We can make history, and we should really strive for that and relish the opportunity to change a very dire situation for a lot of people.
I feel like the community that we're building on this call week to week is so inspiring. And I think about those conversations that we've had, that we've had for years, and I too see the culmination of this, and it feels like right now there is an opportunity to really make moves, and I'm so and that's what is so exciting about about all this. Two things I want to mention before I introduce Malia, who's absorbing all of our stuff. Bruce, I'm getting a message that is there a cap on the number of people who can join the meetings? I'm getting a couple messages from people trying to join. I don't know if that's but maybe something to look into. Two things that I want to mention. We have two initiatives that we're working on that are being developed right now. One is an underwriting initiative that we will orchestrate working with stations. We just actually got our fiscal sponsorship approved, and we'll be gifting underwriting spots to Black-owned businesses in different stations, localities, and that the rollout of that is kind of being developed right now. Shout out to Kristen over here, who I see grinning in my corner. It's a very amazing idea. And then also, I had an amazing conversation with the folks over at Radio Milwaukee today, actually, who have kind of worked out a similar initiative, and they've been amazing and so helpful. So Sarah Fierick, I don't know if you're on here, thank you so much for all your insight and wisdom. And then also, Christine from our team has been building out a system of kind of checks and balances, recommendations for people to be able to do internal audits. And that's also still in process, but I did want to shout out KEXP, who has clearly done some type of something in just like a total revamp of their programming and stuff. And I don't know if Emily Fox made it on, or Gabriel, I can see you, but I mean, it's pretty amazing to see the changes that your station was able to make in such a short time.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Emily's here too.
Hi. There you are.
Hi. Talk though. Gabriel should talk on this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, both of you guys we've talked about. I'm curious, I don't know what the process was, but I think it's really inspiring to see that change can happen quickly, and
yeah, it was it's definitely a long time coming. Like, for folks that don't know, like, KXP historically has been a primarily white organization with over 80% white folks on staff. Most of the Black DJs, none of the Black DJs were in any primetime positions before 2 weeks ago. And yeah, people, it's been long ongoing issues, you know what I mean? Within, I don't know, the course of 2 months, I would say the conversations came about. It started with a statement that KXP put out, kind of acknowledging that KXP has some issues that it needs to work on, and the radio station put those issues out very transparently. And the feedback it got was, this statement doesn't mean anything unless you actually work to make the changes. And right. I don't want to sit up here and represent KXP and say that we've done all the work, because KXP has a long way to go. But the changes that it did make are huge. They promoted myself. I was an overnight DJ. I was on one night a week from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. They promoted me to a morning slot 5 days a week. And I also got promoted as a associate music director. KXP's only had one music director for the last 25 years. Larry Mizell Jr. also got the afternoon show. He's on 5 days a week now. And they promoted him onto the executive team. He's now the director of editorial for the whole station. We have an Afrobeats show just premiered 2 weeks ago. It's amazing. Lace Cadence is the host. He's a longtime musician and DJ. His father is from Senegal and Gambia, so he's representing his people, which I think is important, because that's another issue we have at KXP is playing music. White folks basically playing music from cultures that they're not a part of. You know what I mean? That's something we need to work on. what else? Reverend Dollars, a black trans DJ, just got hired as a new overnight host to fill in the spots. And yeah, and we all acknowledge very publicly that this is just the beginning. You know what I mean? So nobody at the radio station wants KXP to get all the flowers. Like, we've done all the work. No, this is step one. You know what I mean? Of a long ongoing process. You know.
I think it's proof positive that the change of doing the look, like in looking internally on something like this, though, it produces like very positive change, very productive change. So Malia,
can I say?
Of course, yeah.
Can I just say one more thing, because I'm realizing that there's radio stations all around the country that are, you know, tuned in right now that might be scared of making changes like this. Yo, the numbers that KXP has since making these changes are the highest it's ever had in its history. You know, and our fundraising goal that we had just this week, I think it's okay to say this. We had this is our 1 week of fundraising, the first time that we've done fundraising since the pandemic. Our goal was to raise like $10,000 in our little pre-drive 4 days. We've exceeded it by 10 times. I just got the email today that it's raised over 100,000. There's never been this much support for KXP in light of these changes. So I just want to say that for anyone out there who's like, I don't want to change things up too much. No, change things up, please. It'll help everyone, including yourself.
Incredible. So Malia, you are sitting here absorbing all of our stuff right now. You know, Malia and I have been obviously talking about these things. You know, she has a little insight into all of us, but she's not directly involved in our world. So I was hoping she could take over the second half of this panel and guide us a little bit in the things which she is a professional in, and, you know, and also, Malia, maybe a little, you know, thoughts on the stuff that we're working on, any changes we should be making. Davey, Steb, and Tarik, stay dialed in too. We can have a little chatty chat back and forth on this, but I'm so curious to kind of get your take on our little thing here.
Little things like this that change the world. You know, I knew that I was going to be overwhelmed. Like, I have my pad, I've been taking notes, and I think I can break some of my reactions down quickly, and then we can keep talking. Because you guys, you know, I may be a change expert and all of that stuff, but you guys are an expert in your field. And when I was first thinking about this, and you know, Jess and I talked about it, and I could have guessed that Davey was gonna help prime this for me, is that the power of the DJ, whether it's here or in the radio free movements, in, you know, throughout the world, the power of the DJ and radio is critical to movement. And, you know, I often think of the Mouth of the South, who participated in the Birmingham's Children's March. You know, and they have this great video of him, and, you know, and he was the DJ, and he would, like, you know, say all these like funny words like, good God, goobly woobly, or whatever. And then he would be like, today's D-Day, kids, we're meeting at the park. Bring your toothbrush, it's gonna be wet, right? Like, and then the kids would know, okay, we're protesting today. We're probably going to jail. Let me grab my toothbrush. And that was being, you know, and that was, I mean, the families were listening to the morning radio show, right? So it was a way to really plan things in mass, and still in code in a certain way, right? And so that's really what you guys are forming here today. And so the couple of thoughts that I just want to say is, everything that I've heard, I mean, it sounds great, and you guys should keep leaning into it, right? You guys know how to change your stations and what you can do. I think when we're looking at frameworks and how do we have long-term impact, I want to just suggest a couple of ways to look at things. So the first is, what I see you guys developing here is a decentralized structure. And there's an amazing book called Starfish and Spider, which talks about how leaderful organizations or movements end up lasting the longest. And the whole point is, you know, if you have a hierarchical movement going on and you have a head, if you get rid of the head, the movement's dead, right? You cut the head off a spider, the spider's dead. But with the starfish, if you cut the starfish, you get more starfish, right? And the reason why you get more starfish is because thank you, Steb, because every cell is a starter cell, right? Every cell knows how to make a movement. And that's what you guys have here. You guys have all of these radio stations that are deciding on a shared ideology, that are working within your pre-existing networks, and that are talking with one another to create a tradition of inclusion in radio. And that like in 10 years from now, when I hope you guys invite me back as we're like celebrating the success of this movement, I think we're going to, see that this is how these things start. And I'm just thrilled about that. The other thing I want to point out is, what I'm hearing is that there's a few roles for you guys, right? That you're educators, you're creating a narrative, right? You're helping educate your audiences, whether that's about schools and openings, or whether there'll be teachers, or whether that's about the current events. And so that's something that it sounds like you guys can own in your own way. And so, however this coalition and however I can support you guys continuing to get what you need to continue to educate, I think that's one of the powerful things that I heard in these conversations, or in this conversation. The second thing is you guys are conveners, right? As Davey was saying, you're saying where the hot thing is, what the hot thing is to do, and thinking about how your station and yourself can participate in convening, right? We know it's places like this, it's us getting together and redefining the space between us that's going to get us the long-term change. And so, supporting convening, supporting teach-ins, learnings, whatever, I think could be great. And then the internal changes, which I think Gabriel talked really well about what can be pushed inside, and every single one of you guys here can act out, can do different things, right? Not everyone can do all of these things, or not everyone runs the station, or, but wherever you are, looking at how you can start the work. Because really what you guys are doing right now is you're picking a thread and you're pulling it. And that's going to unravel the fabric, right? Each thing has a ripple effect. And if you just look at what's happening in Milwaukee, and as someone who has a ton of love for Milwaukee and the work that's going on in Milwaukee, right? Like, we know that this is a conversation that Milwaukee needs to have, right? And so to have a safe space for people to be able to have that conversation becomes revolutionary. So those are just some of my thoughts around what I heard and what I hear you guys are doing. And, in all of it, I think you should lean into, and also know that you can mess it up, right? I mean, obviously, right? Like, all of a sudden, you can get it all wrong, but you won't, right? Because you're not, you're not all of a sudden going to invite the Klan in, right? Like, so even in places where maybe you could have done better, or maybe, this worked this way, but we could do it this way, or the community didn't really feel that, see that as a positive. Don't see that as a negative, because that helps you and the community have a deeper relationship with creating change together. And that's going to have a longer lasting impact. So I heard so much that I feel like I almost want to write you guys a whole thing. But it's a really, really powerful start.
Malia, I did collect some questions as instructed that I have gotten from people along the way. So I thought, I'm going to bring up a few things in conversations, and I also just want to mention, in the last 2 months, I've had some of the most meaningful conversations with people, and really just great conversations about what's going on, but also just about people and what they've been doing when they're facing adversity. And there have been a couple things which have come up a couple times. One of them is people feel like they're not in a position to affect change. They feel like they're too far down the totem pole. They feel like they don't understand, or maybe that their role in this organization is small and they can't do, what is a recommendation we can make to somebody who feels like they can't do anything, or like they, you know, is there a way to continue to inspire them to push?
Yes, I mean, so I would say you can change things in the smallest ways, right? Like you can, I mean, if you think about workers' movements, right, across the world, these were people who didn't have power but found ways to self-organize, and that's what you can start doing. I mean, if you come in and, you know, I mean, I don't know what happens at radio stations, although I am an Emerson grad, and shout out to WERS, but you know, if someone comes in and is like, I alphabetize like the cart or whatever, right? How much power do I have? Yeah, Emerson Mafia. You do have power, right? In the sense of you're an employee there and you matter. And so whether it's participating in an employee resource group or seeing if you can get an employee resource group off the ground, right? You can start with the power you have, which is your own agency. You know, maybe you and a couple of your friends at the radio station want to start a book club to talk about these things. You know, maybe you want to see if you can get something in a newsletter, right? So the way we talk about the work, it sounds very big, right? Like, and it's because of the way we tell history, right? So, you know, we tell the history of King, but we don't tell the history of all the DJs, right? We don't tell the history of, you know, the small lunch counters, the golf courses, right? That a group of folks decided, like, you know, we're going to go golfing, right? Like all of a sudden we're going to do this, right? And it's that individual agency. You know, you can also just decide that, you know, you're going to be nice to people, right? Like that you're going to make sure everyone feels welcome in the space. And while that might seem small because it doesn't feel like some huge campaign, as we know, microaggressions are some of the most daily attacks that people of color feel. And those are some of the smallest things. So, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, you can, because you're a human being that's a part of this tribe, affect your tribe. And no, you might not be the program manager, and you might not, you know, be the program director, and you might not be able to say like, we're all of a sudden going to put, you know, Black folks on drive time. But that doesn't mean that you can't help the program manager read books that might help them, you know, be more comfortable, or listen to podcasts, or, you know, again, suggest from where you can. So the other thing I would say is this group right here has all the brainstorming power you need. You know, I know Davey, the most, so sorry, Davey, you're going to get called on a lot for me, but, you know, Davey is someone that I sit down and I think about work with him, right? Like Davey understands the work. And so, you know, even within this group, maybe there's a sub like chat, right? Or conversation about, you know, folks who don't feel that they have power in this station finding their power. And I know that there's several people on this call who can help think what those specific things could be.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, one of the things that we've been fortunate to kind of have is the breakout groups, and it plays to people's strengths. Those breakout groups allow folks to focus on what they're good at and how they can contribute. And then that's, again, Jess, you've been so great about coming in and starting this. I got to say thank you again, because you picked up the phone, you made the phone call, and it just started the wildfire. So thanks to you. Shout out, props to you.
I gotta say the outreach group has really been awesome, carrying the weight and like touching, like really starting to like touch all the stations and like everybody. That's one thing I will say, Malia, is we have started to kind of like, you know, like spread out, starfish out, if you will, and like figure out our ways. And it's been, that's helped definitely increase the footprint, and like definitely we're seeing a lot more people coming through every week, and it's definitely been like what's kind of taken the actions that we have in place, like help them, like now there is more movement on them.
Right. And don't make, what's that saying? Don't make perfection the enemy of the good, or whatever, right? Like, you know, I think start your ideas and test them, pilot them out, right? See if it works. I think we can often get paralyzed trying to think about the perfect thing. And often it is the most authentic thing that's going to have the most traction.
Another thing which has come up is like, I mean, and one thing you should know is that like a lot of radio, I mean, I'm sure you've gathered this to an extent, but like a lot of the stations, the infrastructure, whether it's at like the non-comm level, college level, it's very white, you know? So we've had people kind of being like, you're talking about authenticity and stuff. How do people step outside of that and create like a diverse situation within a structure which is not inherently diverse? Like, are there first steps or things that people should know and learn about when they're trying to, you know, take steps in that direction?
Yes, and there's a bunch, and we can, we can go deeper into sort of some of the steps and the tactics that you can look at. But what I ask white groups to do is to, rather than immediately think about action, self-reflect on why you need to take the action, because that's going to help you realize why you haven't had Black people or brown people being a part of your thing, you know, and to all of a sudden take action is a white privilege thing, right? It comes from a place of privilege. There's a problem, I can fix it. And really, this is a place where white leadership needs to step back, right? And they need to lead by stepping back and letting other people lead. And that's very uncomfortable to do. And so the reflection that you have to do as a company or as a station to say, well, why are we so white? And again, not in a judgmental, right? No one's calling anyone, you know, oh, you know, racist, blah, 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 blah. Although you may get there as you're peeling back the layers. But if you don't answer that question first of why don't we have Black people in the first place, you know, like James Baldwin said in I Am Not Your Negro, you know, the first question that white people have to answer is why did they need a Negro in the first place? And that really gets at the heart of this original sin question, right? Why haven't we started? And, you know, once you can reflect like that, the steps become much easier, you know, and I think it also helps the fragility of it all, you know. So I'm now in banking, which is not only a very white space, but a very staid space. And I'm not, I can't say I'm necessarily welcomed in the industry, but I'm okay with that, right? Like I'm okay with the fact that white people get uncomfortable and may push back on me. And then there's enough couple of, you know, white folks that support that help you move the conversation through. And I think that's what you're going to end up seeing, right? Is that there are going to be a group of people who are going to center white discomfort. And that's okay. Hopefully they'll move beyond that. But if you can do your best to, you know, self-reflect, hold on and work on your own fragility, you know, understand it's yours, and understand that while you might not be directly responsible for this, you've been complicit in allowing it to happen. And again, you don't need to beat yourself up, but you need to accept that accountability, you know. And that's the last thing that I would say is whether you want to change one thing, two things, or the world, if you don't have a system of accountability, that matter, right? And so I often tell companies, you know, show me your budget and I'll show you what you care about. And I think that that becomes, you know, the next question, right? So, okay, you know, we've reflected, we've seen that we have this institutional, structural, and implicit bias that says things like, you know, we hire radio people who have a certain degree, or we have, right, there's certain things that build a culture. And when we talk about culture, we're talking of, when we're talking about hegemony, I guess, we're talking about white middle class culture, right? So that's what you want to start deconstructing. And, you know, once you do that, the actions, the tactics, it becomes natural, right? It becomes natural to do. But it's that there's actually it's harder to do psychologically. And I think we jump to the tactics because we don't actually want to deal with the psychology of our institutional, systemic, and implicit bias.
Can I add something to that?
Oh, sure.
You know, one thing in doing this, you know, and big shout out to those suggestions, Malia, is we don't want to run into a situation where we either stay in the comfort zone, so you get a black face that does white things, or you fetishize. You go out and you're going, well, let me go to the hood and find somebody and you put them, and they're not even reflective of the community, but they form into a stereotype. So let me give you an example to make this clearer. When it comes to women, there is, lack of diversity in some of these situations, and we had to go through a very similar type of exercise in terms of how come you have 5 guests and you didn't have any women to speak on the expertise of your end of the year show, the hottest groups, things like that, right? And we had to sit there and we had to have this thing called intentionality. Like, we are going to make sure that instead of 5 people, there's going to be at least 2 of those seats are going to be women in there. Now, as a male, heterosexual male, I might be like, who's wearing the low cut dress and the heels, and let me bring them in and put them on the radio. And that's really me projecting and satisfying my own personal needs or biases versus getting the person who is actually going to be reflective of a community that is not being represented, if that's making sense. So I had to be, we had to learn to be very clear, like, okay, we're pulling these people in. Who are they? Oh, wait, they represent this large body of community. They got receipts. They put in the work. And by including them, you're not falling into this thing of tokenism. They have agency and they're equitable in this conversation, if that's making sense. And I think, over the years, we had to learn to do that. We've had to learn to do that with the LGBT community. At least out here, you just can't walk around and be like, well, we got one gay person. No. You gotta, there's rooms at the table and opinions and mindsets and analysis and expertise all count in the equation. So I think the same thing applies when it comes to diversity among, racial lines, that we have to have that intentionality, but avoid the fetishizing and comforting so that we don't,
Yes. And, I'd love to actually pick up on that, because I think tokenism, fetishizing, it's sort of like two of the same coin, right? Like 2 sides of the same coin, right? It's more in a quota, checking a box than actually getting it done. And I think that every community should start with their pre-existing networks, right? So like Davey was saying, in Oakland, it's probably not even just LGBT, right? But like Black trans lives matters and disabled trans lives matters. And and what you don't want to get into is, oh my God, do I have like a left-handed lesbian in a wheelchair? Like, do we have everyone, right? Like, because that ends up missing the point, right? But if where your communities are and you just slowly start deepening those relationships, right? Through content, through convening, right? Through the storytelling and the weaving of cultural narratives that you guys know how to do better than anyone else. And that, and that starts to help you bring in, I'm going to say this, but I'm in a safe space, right? That helps you bring in your folks, right? So, just like Davey was saying, like who are your crew, because not every Black person is your crew, right? And you may be a country station. And so bringing in, a hip hop DJ, so he's Black, like that's not going to be helpful, right? But bringing in, I don't know, Bubba Wallace to like do, to do a conversation about NASCAR and like his favorite 10 albums, that makes sense, right? Like that makes sense. And so, you want to remain authentic to yourself, and to who you are, and not become a stereotype or anything like that. The final thing I want to say on that is, when Norway actually passed the law that if you were a publicly traded company, that 50% of your board had to be women. And so what the boards did is they all put their wives on the board. Right. So you can get there in ways that doesn't get you there. Yeah. And it's best to just stay authentic and do it in the best way that's going to bring you the most success.
So we are getting dangerously close to 7, but I have one more question I want to put to all the panelists. And it's it's about advice that of how to kind of start the conversation around these topics, social and racial justice issues with your superiors. How to, as people who have had this conversation, I'm assuming many times, any advice you can offer to people on the call that may be trying to start this conversation? Malia, you should maybe start since, or if you have ideas, but I would be curious just to hear, like, you know, we have to wrap pretty soon, but I would love any tidbits you guys have to offer people who are trying to like move this conversation forward in their own circles.
I'm going to let the other guys go because I've been talking. So the other panelists have the word.
Well, I'm lucky to where I work, where I don't really have to think about how do I. Let's just basically, we have a culture of honesty. Like I'm able to just show my emotion and say, hey, I don't like this. We need to address this. So I have a benefit. I was going to jokingly say my tip would just stare that person down till they break. Just stare at them, right? But I don't know. I think you have to have that conversation in a, I know this term's overused, but a safe space. So invite actual superior. Can we do this in a space that there's no backlash, that we can be honest, and once this event's over, we can go back? I think that's one way to do it, to make that superior feel comfortable, right? So that's my one pointer, is try to not have a planned conversation, but a tough conversation, and be honest about it. I don't think you need to just go up to that person, your superior, and say, yo, you're racist. Stop it. You know, like, can we have a conversation, can we have a meeting, like our regular staff meeting, have this conversation, talk about it. And can we be honest about it? Like, do it that way.
Yeah, I'm a lot like you, Tarik, in the sense that I am in a very good position. One of my best friends happens to be my boss, so it makes things a lot easier to have these conversations. But Jeff and I also, it's strange at the station because Jeff is a minority. He's a white male at our station that is a minority. That's got to be an outlier in itself. But Jeff and I have always been able to have these conversations that can be difficult. I don't mind being kind of a sounding board for him in that regard if he has questions about things, and also I don't mind checking him on stuff if I feel like something's a little bit off, you know. And we'll have discussions about playlists, or hey, you know what, we need to figure out how to make this, you know, this hour more equitable for everybody, like women, people of color, you know, folks that look like me. One of the things that Tarik, you and I have talked about at Non-COMMs before and past is like, there's like maybe 7 or 8 people of color at the whole conference at any given time. And going back to what we had said earlier, we need to ask that question. Why is it that way? Why isn't the format a little, you know, more, not necessarily accepting, because everybody's accepting, but to an extent, but why aren't we seeing more people of color in the format? And that's a really important thing. And that's the conversation we need to have with the folks here in these panels.
Davey D, Malia, any last knowledge bombs?
I'm going to go first because I don't want to have to talk after Davey. Davey's going to close this out hard. So, you know, I put in the chat, call people in, not out, you know, and I think especially when you're in a group and, you know, you're in a tribe, right? You need to keep that tribe together. And so finding ways to, you know, as Tarik said, find that safe space. I also think sometimes you can do and not say, you know, so I want to also encourage people to just sometimes do things, right? And you don't have to say like, I'm doing this because I'm fighting racism, you know, like, just guess what? Like, we're just getting coffee from the Black coffee guys now, right? Like, and we don't have to talk about it. We don't have to make it a thing, right? And so sometimes in those actions, it allows people to follow with more comfort. But thank you so much, you guys. This has been great.
I just want to say thanks to everybody for turning out. Thanks to everybody for participating with enthusiasm from week to week. Please tell a friend, get involved, help us get more stations involved, help us get more voices in the mix. we are working on some really important and exciting things, and we need more bodies, we need more brains, we need more skills. So anybody who wants to get involved, there is plenty of work to do, and we welcome everybody. So I want to just thank WXPN for letting us meet here in this very special occasion as a part of the non-com, the virtual non-convention. Thank you so much. And I hope we can do another conversation like this again. Like, I think that we're just, you know, touching the tip of the iceberg here, and there's a lot more that we can get into together.
Well, hey, Jess, thanks for pulling this all together. Thanks to all the panelists. If you are not looking at the chat area, overwhelming positive reaction to tonight's conversation, and
Yay.
I think we'll take it up and schedule another one of these conversations again. However, next week, let me remind everybody, it is the virtual music meeting, and I hope everybody can make it. And we're recording this, and we're going to be turning it around pretty quickly. It should be up on YouTube tomorrow, and we'll make sure everybody's got the link. So thanks, Jess, and everybody else, and we'll see you down the road, and keep fighting the good fight. All right, everybody?
Thanks, everybody.
There you go.
Bruce, I'm going to grab the chat. 1 second.
Yeah, I also just did.
Okay, good. Cool. Thanks, everybody. And thank you so much, Davey, Steb, Malia, Tarik. You guys are literally the best. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, good.
Mwah, 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 mwah.
Thank you, Jess.
Bye.